Hello.
Hello.
This is the Second Button Podcast. I'm Andrew, and this is...
I'm Brian.
And today we're doing Season 2, Episode 10, The Baby Shower. This was supposed to be, as we discussed last week, the DVDs in a different order, and we figured out why.
Mm-hmm.
So when it was recorded, it was to be Season 2, Episode 4, instead of Episode 10. So this one's way out of order. But it first came out May 16th, 1991, which would be this week of that many years ago.
Yeah. But, it does. I think we did talk about it on the last episode. Like an opening bit that kind of was worked into the episode of the previous one. So like where it's opening, man be like, women be like joke about like men watching TV versus how women watch
And when
TV.
I started watching this episode, I thought, we already saw this, but we just talked about it. We didn't actually see this bit yet.
But
we talked about this bit.
Yeah, how it is on Netflix. I'm like, they're right next to each other. I'm like, but I'm sure how it was supposed to, air or written, they were going to be so far apart that you watch it like months or whatever. Yeah, you're not going to remember that, or you'd be like, oh yeah, that is something. Because he also brings this joke up later in the series, like. I think it was Kramer's girlfriend or whoever he's dating is like heckling Jerry. He's like, yeah, it's because men hunt and women nest. Oops. He's like, she hissed and booed me. Yeah. What, you just can't take it?
I don't get hecklers. Like, why would you go to something like that and then just heckle the performer? What enjoyment?
People get drunk. Like I was just went to see a stand-up show last night. Saw Stavros Halkias from Cumtown. He was great. He does a lot of like crowd work stuff, and so sometimes like he posts videos on his social media, and sometimes people just interject with just nonsense. He's like, what? Yeah, okay, both you assholes. Hold on, you wanted to say something that I'm sure was really going to add to the show, but this guy too. I'm like, you want to repeat that? What you said? And he goes, silence. Oh, because you're too much of a fucking pussy to say that again. Okay. What about now that you have the stage? I'm like, what about you? Oh, you're also too much of a pussy. Okay. Can we just like keep that to yourselves? He just kind of deals with it.
Well, I had the same thing because as a musician, people still like heckle you even when you're a musician. So we're at a show on the weekend, and the singer stopped to tune her guitar. Like didn't stop it. Like between songs, tuned the guitar and did the whole jabber with the audience thing. And some guy yells out, just keep playing the fucking music. Like just screams it from the front of the stage. So she stops and looks at him. She goes, are you going to be that guy that stands here all night and says, keep it going? You're just going to be an asshole all night? Is that your job? You're going to be the fucking asshole? Does everyone think this guy's an asshole? And then he just stood there. He had nothing else to say.
He doesn't just Homer Simpson into the crowd and goes.
Yeah, just backs up.
Buddy of ours, Johnny Ray, old Johnny Two Guns over there. He's got a great one, which like after the first song of a band, he says, "One more song, just so they play 2 songs. Get the fuck out of here. You're done. It's because you like hear that.
With me.
I'm like that's pretty good. But anyways. So, he does the whole thing about how, men flip the channels and they, flipping it so fast, they don't even know what they're not watching, not wanting to watch. And then, the joke is like, men hunt, women nest. And then he goes on to talk about like back in, olden times when there was kings and jesters and stuff like that. It's like, oh, do you think they just had a bunch of them lined up and say, all right, tell me a story. What do you got? No, that sucks. Anyways, what about you? Okay, you move on. And like, okay, no, get out of here. You got a story? Is there any women in it? Okay, get out of here. No. He's just like, shut up. Next. So he was kind of, that's the opening joke there. And then the episode opens up. They're at Monk's. They're at the booth. I want to say that's the booth. That's kind of iconic for the show and the set. And then it's Elaine, Jerry, and George. And then they're talking about Elaine's friend Leslie being pregnant. And then George is just upset. Immediately, like, sets him off. She was a performance artist, And then George went on a date with her. And then it was unequivocally the worst date of his life. Yeah. And then, he's like, Elaine's like, oh, I'm so sorry that I tried to set you up with a beautiful, intelligent woman. And then George he gets super George style. He's very defensive. It's like, what is that supposed to mean? You think I can't attract beautiful, attractive women? And then Jerry just kind of, leans in, gets a jab at him. He's like, you're on thin ice, George.
Yeah.
You don't want the answer to that one, kind of thing. Yeah. And then it's a good back and forth. It's just kind of friends just ribbing each other.
Yeah.
But it also sets up the story of the episode. But one thing I did notice after he says, you're on thin ice, George, he cuts his grilled cheese sandwich and he eats it with a fork.
Oh, really?
Did you notice that?
I didn't clue in.
Well, because earlier there was a shot of him eating the grilled cheese sandwich like a sandwich.
Yeah.
Like he just finishes the bite and just eats it with his hand. And then on that scene he cuts it and he eats the grilled cheese.
Weird.
Well, I'm like we'll eventually get to the episode, but the chocolate bar or their donuts, being eaten with a fork and knife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's just funny that I'm like, I can't think of a sandwich that I would want to eat that way with a fork and knife.
No.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't think of one. And then also like burgers. You always get burgers that are cut in half. More at the fancier restaurants. So it's maybe like giving me like a clue here. Ooh. For fancy burgers, you got to have it cut in half. But what if you ate the burger with a fork and knife?
We had a burger week there a couple weeks ago. And we're in this restaurant, nice restaurant. And it was like one of the more expensive ones. And someone's eating their burger with a fork and knife. Now she's like, what's that person doing over there? Why are they doing that? Just like, calling them out. I'm sure they heard everything.
But it's like, maybe that should be a thing for fancy. If you're eating the fancy, because some of the burgers or sandwiches are fucking huge.
Yeah.
It might be. I know sometimes, burritos, if they're wet burritos where they have the sauce and shit on it, you're kind of supposed to eat it like that because nobody's gonna be like, at least I assume nobody's gonna be like, oh, here's a wet burrito covered in sauce. Oh, eat it like that. Get all your fingers. I'm like, I love being an adult. You look like a fucking shit when everywhere.
I was younger, my grandmother took me to McDonald's, and we didn't eat fast food that much. So she had fries, and then she goes back up. She goes, they didn't give me a fork and knife, and went up to the counter. She's like, where's my fork and knife? They're like, we don't have forks and knives because back then they didn't have salad or anything back then. Yeah. She goes, how am I supposed to eat my French fries? And she was fucking. I remember being so mad. I'm like, with your fingers. I was probably 6 or 7 years old. Yeah. And she's just screaming at the counter because she wants a fork and knife for her French fries.
Where are my fries? My fork and knife for French. You cut them in half. I'm like, no. And maybe that is more civilized. The way I eat them, I just grab them just shove them in my mouth. Grab I
take a fistful, put some ketchup in as well.
I just shove. It's pretty good. But anyways, it goes back, George, he's saying, for her next performance, she should, give birth on stage. Kind of like it seems up her alley. Like she's a shitty performer. Like she sucks is kind of what he's getting at. And Elaine says oh, well, she stopped performing. And George is quick with the comeback. Oh, what a huge blow to the culture. George is on. He's heated. And then, Jerry with right after him is oh, he holds a grudge like Khomeini. I was like, I have no, and he gets a laugh out of the crowd. I'm like, do people laugh just because I'm like, this is a joke, so you guys should laugh. Ha 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 ha. I'm like, I don't know who that is. Yeah. So that reference went over my head. Obviously, I get what he's saying. That it's George is just holding a grudge with kung fu grip, type thing. Not gonna let it go. So I had to do a little bit of Googling. Yeah. Just type the guy's name in. So this is what Wikipedia has to say. An Iranian political and religious leader who served as the first supreme leader of Iran from 1979 until his death in 1989. That was your Brian's Wikipedia minute.
So did he rule with an iron fist?
I think so, yeah.
Iron fist?
Iran fist. There you go. We're out here. Anyways, woo! But yeah, George, he talks, just about the shit performance, and it turned out to be a date. She took him to go see her perform, and it was here's a date, and I'm thinking what a move. Hey, come to my show, date night. You want to watch me play music? I definitely stop. That's definitely not a first date thing. Definitely. And then even like girlfriends who have seen me a bunch of times, I'm like, you don't have to come to this.
Yeah, and then it like want to be there. So yeah,
well, it's fun if it's like a bigger show and maybe her friends come out or more people come out and it's like, oh, you can kind of hang out, get drunk or whatever.
Yeah.
And then got to a point where it's like, oh, this probably just like not gonna be that big of a don't it's a weeknight, don't fucking worry about it. Yeah. And then she's kind of like, are you sure? She's like, you gonna be pissed later? And I'm like, no, I'm not. And she's like, Given the Larry David look, she would be like, I'm not gonna be pissed. I kind of don't even want to go and play this fucking
that does
thing.
happen.
Yeah, I'm like, anyways, I just think that's funny that it's like, oh, hey, a first date, George, why don't you come to my show?
Yeah, just so weird.
They do make it, that same joke on like Tasteless Gentleman. A couple of the guys are DJs, so he's like, hey, want to come watch me DJ? And pay a $30 cover.
Yeah. Not sneaking in the back door either.
Yeah, you pay the cover and go. Because sometimes too, especially if, like, you only have a certain amount on your guest list. I'm like, oh, I'm coming with my friends. I'm like, cool, I can get you in for free, but your friend has to fucking pay.
Yeah.
Like you're at a bar or whatever we play. But anyways, so and George, talks about the performance or the date or whatever. It was at a warehouse in Brooklyn, and she was performance is she's cooking dinner for God. And it sounds shitty already. Like, that sounds like something I don't want to see. And then in the performance, she spills a can of chocolate sauce on George, ruining his new red shirt. And then he talks about, like, how he's dreamed about just letting her have it.
Yeah.
Just teeing off backstage. He's like, that's what he's, during the performance, that's what he's like, I was ready to just go off on her and say, look here. And then he talks about how he actually went backstage and he wussied out. And then, Jerry chimes in. It's like, oh, the reason why he wussied out is because he thought he still had a shot at her. Yeah. I'm like, oh, we need to go back to my place. This kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's why. Not because he's like, oh, I had to change a heart or anything. Like, no.
No.
But he doesn't say anything. He doesn't get to, like, let her have it because he's all pissed. He was steaming the whole time during her show. And then she ends up leaving with somebody else, is what he says. And then he just doesn't call him or whatever.
It sounds like it wasn't a date. It sounds like
exactly.
she just let someone come to her show.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, it's not even a date. I'm like, she left. She left you on red. She did. Yeah. It's like, that made me think, like, I don't think she ever thought it was a date. No. And then the fact that, like, it is a dick move to just like, hey, this was part of the show. And Lane says, oh, it was an accident that she spilled it. I'm like, okay, but just say like, oh, I'm sorry for fucking throwing chocolate on you.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Jerry asks him about the shirt. I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever happened to that shirt? Knowing damn well, like, that George still has it.
Yeah.
Just kind of poking at him. Because he says it with like, oh, what about that shirt? He says it with a smile.
Yeah, because they're continuing the conversation. Elaine and Jared keep talking, and George is just so stuck on this anger. So Jared just kind of turns at him and gets to dig in.
But he mentions how he still kept the shirt. And of course George would, because he paid for it.
Yeah.
And he wears it under sweaters. He wears it under sweaters, and just the collar is clean, so he can still wear it.
Yeah.
And then quickly he changes. Elaine mentions, how the woman Leslie asked her to set up the baby shower, which is kind of weird. That it'd be like, oh, hey, my friend, like, instead of like you offering it, it'd be like, hey, you should do this for me.
Yeah.
So that Elaine mentions how she like can't say no to this woman. That it's like she wants to win her approval, and it's always been since they were in college and stuff like that. There also was like a mention of like who her husband is.
Yeah,
he's like
third or fourth cousin of the Kennedys.
Kennedys, yeah.
And then Lane
pops up. Yeah.
Lane's like, the Kennedys are so boring. And that was kind of I was thinking foreshadowing for down the road, but it ended up being foreshadowing for the same episode. That she actually is interested in the Kennedys, but she was acting like she didn't care about the Kennedys.
Yeah.
When she was with the boys.
But, so anyways, talking about like, oh, I'm going to set up the shower. And then George just stands up. Like he's like like he's so worked up he can't even sit down anymore. It's like he's in his own world. He's like, she doesn't deserve a shower. She deserves a baby monsoon. Like, what the fuck?
But I couldn't imagine someone being like, can you throw me a baby shower? Like something you really don't know all that well, it seems like. It's just something that she kind of knows.
Yeah. It's like, can you throw me a surprise party?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It just seems weird.
Can you throw a party in my honor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to think. Oh, yeah. And then, Jerry does, I guess Elaine kind of asks him if she could borrow his apartment for the shower.
Yeah, because her roommate has Lyme disease all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's the roommate has Lyme disease, and then like Jerry's like, I thought she had Epstein-Barr syndrome, and then Elaine has a great line that she's like, oh, he has Epstein-Barr, she has Epstein-Barr syndrome with a twist of Lyme disease, and I'm like, that's hilarious, and the audience thought it was funny, but they cut it off right away just to go to like the next thing. I'm like, that was a great joke.
Yeah, they didn't let her breathe at all.
Yeah.
And then everyone made that joke with COVID too. That I got Lyme disease to go with my corona.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
a twist of Lyme disease. But anyway, like that, Jerry's like, oh, okay, he's kind of just making comments about a baby shower, and then it's like, I've never been to one of those. What is it? Kind of joking around, and then George comes back and he's still talking about it.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, she's not even saying goodbye. How could you not say goodbye? But yeah, Jerry mentions that, like, okay, I'll be out of town that Saturday. I got a show. You can, use my place. And then George still talking to himself the whole time. He's like, one day he's going to give her a piece of his mind. He won't let it go. And then he gets up, he leaves money for the lunch, and then he's still like steaming, kind of comes back and then looks at it and takes $1, like, no, that's too much for a tip, and then he leaves. Just classic George. He's still pissed, still cheap. It's still George.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it goes to Jerry's apartment, and he's fiddling with the shitty TV reception, whatever. Yeah. And then Kramer tells him just to steal cable.
Did you ever have to do that with your antenna? Did you ever go without cable and have to use the bunny ears? And
I think the earliest I remember a TV being there, it was straight to cable, I believe.
Yeah, I had a period where I needed to play with the bunny ears when I was younger, trying to get some sort of signal.
Yeah, but it's funny. He's like fiddling with it. It's like, look at yourself.
Yeah.
But he's like
pathetic, wasting your life.
Yeah. He mentions that a guy is over at his place and he'll do, a illegal cable hookup for $150.
Yeah.
It's like 56 channels, movies, sports, nudity, free for life. It's like, Kramer, it's illegal. It's not illegal. Like, it's against the law. Well, yeah.
Well, yeah. It's not illegal. It's just against the law. But that's when people look at stealing cable and stuff. They don't think like, well, yeah, it's illegal, but everybody's doing it, so.
Well, it's like that, and like stealing movies and shit like that. I guess that's more analogous for nowadays. If you're gonna like steal or download movies or whatever, it's like, the stealing cable thing was like a plot point for like a lot of '90s shit.
Oh yeah,
it reminded me of like, I could think of like Simpsons was a major episode. This one, like the movie Cable Guy,
Yeah.
And it always, like, how does that even work? How do they steal the cable?
Well, I remember, I think it's been long enough. My dad's not going to go to jail. But when I was younger, my parents canceled the cable when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And then I remember my dad going outside with this wrench that he must have borrowed from somebody. And there's a special wrench to get the cable box open on the outside of the house. And he just went outside and he reconnected the cable. There we go. We had free cable. So,
oh, shit.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, made me think. I'm like, how did you steal cable back then? How do you get cable now? How do you have internet now? I'm like, I really don't understand how a lot of things work.
Yeah.
I'm like, how does that work? Fuck, I'm stupid. Anyway. But, Kramer's talking about the cable guy. He's an amazing man, Jerry. he'll help you commit a bunch of crimes. He's slow your gas meter down. He'll steal cable, and then he sells slugs for the subway. So he's just a fucking asshole piece of shit.
Slows down your gas meters, though.
But yeah, Jerry's apprehensive about it because it's illegal. You're stealing cable. He's like, cops might track me down, and then Kramer's like, come on. It convinces him by saying, oh, all these Mets games are going to be on cable. Well, that was it, I guess. That's what he needed because he gives in.
Yeah.
And they're going to install it on the, when he's out. You'll get it when you come back. You'll have cable. Jerry's going to be a cable boy.
Yeah.
So the next scene, Jerry comes back from his trip, and there's FBI agents in his apartment.
Yeah.
He's under arrest for the illegal cable, stealing cable, and then Kramer ratted him out. And then the Russian guy was an undercover cop the whole time. It's super intense. Jerry tries to flee the scene, and all the cops just open fire and shoot him in the back.
You call him Steinfeld. It says Steinfeld. Mr. Steinfeld?
You're in big trouble. And he runs, and then they just shoot him in the back. He just dies. Yeah. Kramer's little cable boy is dead. Obviously, it was a dream. It's just funny how it just like... It was a funny but weird scene. I'm like,
I felt like Kramer's hair was more controlled. It seemed like Kramer's hair was a little tidier and stuff in Jerry's mind.
Dream sequence. I don't think they've done that on any other episode, like a dream.
No,
I can't. At least nothing comes to mind. But it's just something like a little writing device or whatever.
They talk about this in the DVD, and they say that Larry Charles wrote that part, and he said it felt very Tarantino, which I don't think it would have felt Tarantino in '91 because I don't think Tarantino had anything up in '91. But anyway, he recalled it being kind of Tarantino-y, kind of dark, slow motion shooting scene, and he said that he enjoys blood and killing people, so he throws it into sitcoms when he does sitcoms too. I was like, it didn't really fit the show. But
no, it didn't. I mean, it was funny. Because Kramer kind of saved it with "You my little cable boy."
What did you do to my cable boy?
Little cable boy. And the fact that just FBI agents are just gonna open fire in somebody's apartment, like that's not real at all.
Over cable.
But, kill somebody over cable. But anyway, so obviously a dream. Jerry wakes up on the airplane, and he goes and he asks for a drink, and she says no. And then
very rude.
What the? Yeah, it's like what the fuck? It's like, are they cutting out drinks now? It reminded me of like, okay, so flying to Austin, I guess a couple months ago, earlier this year, I went to go see my buddy Kyle in Texas, and I paid a little bit extra, like another like $10, $15 to be in like the upgraded seats. So not first class, but it's like you get to
open
Wi-Fi.
the door when the plane crashes.
Yeah. Well, you get Wi-Fi, and then you get unlimited alcoholic beverages.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay, well, yeah. It's only a couple-hour flight, but boy, you're probably going to have at least a beer or two.
You don't offer Canadians unlimited alcohol anywhere. So I don't think we have that.
But I'm like, so I ask, when she, the flight attendant, she comes around, asks for drinks. And I'm like, okay, I see people getting, cocktails and stuff like that. And then I'm like, okay. I'm like, oh, what kind of beers do you have? I'm like, oh, they have like a lager, and then they have like an IPA. I'm like, cool. Let me get just whatever. It's gonna be fine. Just a 16-ounce can. She gives me that, and I'm like, oh, can I also have a water? And she's, the fuck is
so upset with the water?
Like, I'm like, what the fuck was that about? And I was sitting next to Johnny, and Johnny didn't want anything. I'm like, okay, say he did want a beer. So you're going to have to 2 fucking drinks, and then I asked for because I want a water. Yeah. Like, I'm fucking thirsty. What the fuck? So the fact she goes, like, it's like, I'm like, what the fuck is your, I'm like, I wasn't rude about it. I'm like, hey, bitch, give me a fucking, no. I asked her, can I also have a water? And then she's like,
you weren't like, ugh. Water.
Snapping. Yeah. I'm like, she was pissed. And even Johnny's like, what the fuck is your problem? It's fucking water.
Yeah.
I'm like, like I said, I wasn't rude or anything, but I'm like, Jesus Christ. I don't know if it's like I pushing my luck because I got 2 beverages.
Yeah.
Like, no. And then so she gave me the water, and it's like a little. They have boxed water or whatever, and then it's like a little tiny, like I don't know, feels like a 4-ounce glass cup. She pours it, and I'm like, oh, here you go. Here's a fucking spittle of water. It throws in my fucking face. And then I'm like, okay, well, I guess I could have asked her when she was coming around again, but I'm like, I fucking didn't want to oh, hey, let me have a beer and be more dehydrated,
Yeah.
I don't know. Because, whatever. I like to drink a lot of water. I try and drink a gallon a day.
Yeah,
but, so, there you go. So, so she goes around. I have my beer, have my water, and then she comes around again, and then this lady across, just a small plane. So I'm noticing she had a cocktail, and then when the flight attendant came around again, I'm like, oh, does anybody want anything else? The same lady over there asked for another second cocktail and a water. She gave her the full box of water. Oh, here you go. Here you go. So it's not a fucking issue. Not a fucking issue for her to get a cocktail, which she had to make, and then also a fucking full box of water. Not here's a fucking splash of water. You fucking dry ass mouth, you bastard. Where's this woman? I'm like, oh, so here you go, sweetie. You want fucking keys to the plane? Fucking fly it all you want. But this dickhead. And I'm like, what the hell did I do?
What did I do to you?
This stupid moron here listening to his he's just playing solitaire. I'm like, you fucking idiot. Oh, you fucking beer. Fucking get in here. I'll shake it for you.
Well, last time I flew, we had from Windsor, Ontario to here. We had 3 flights. So it was like fly to Toronto, layover for 3 hours, fly to Ottawa, touchdown, didn't get off the plane, just touchdown, picked up more passengers and kept going. So we got 1 drink per flight with this airline. So we had 1 drink for the first 45-minute flight. Then we had another drink for the second half-hour flight. And then we had another drink while we flew back to Halifax. And one of them, we had like a tall boy. I don't know what you guys call them. The taller cans of beer.
Yeah. Tall boys.
We call them tall boys. Yeah. So we had one of those. And the flight was so short. By the time you get ready where they can go around with the cart, to the time they have to put everything away, it was like 10 or 15 minutes. So Ashley and I finish our beer, and he's coming around, and he goes, I need the glasses, but you guys can hold on to the cans. I'm like, no, we're done. He's like, look at you go. He's like, all proud of us because we drank our beer so fast.
Yeah. I have a coworker. She used to be a flight attendant, retired. And she was talking about like, oh yeah, this is always like, sometimes people just like with their drinks. Cause I was telling that same bit about, I'm being on the plane. Yeah. And she's like, yeah, what the fuck? And she's like, she's like, what the fuck is that a problem? It's water. People want water. It's like, why didn't they give you the whole box? I'm like, that's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Yeah, you want the water.
I'm glad you're on my side here. And then, she was saying like, oh yeah, you like some of these flights, like it's a flight to Japan, like this business guy, and like he's saying he's nervous, and he was like getting so many drinks. I'm like, oh fuck it, and just keep giving him whiskey, and that's what he wanted. I'm like, you better slow down because just being in the air and it kind of messes with your head a little bit. He's like, nah, you'll be fine. And it's like I ended up being on the same flight as on his way back. And I'm like, and I offered him like, oh, you want a whiskey? He's like, no, God, I was dead the next day. He's like, I'll just have a water, please. Thank you. She's like, yeah, you better calm down on the Jameson there. He's like, no, I feel great. And then he's like, I was at my meeting and I felt like shit. She's like, I told you. But yeah, anyway, so that was my story. And the fact that I'm like, yeah, that fucking water, like, gave her across the way there a full box of water.
Yeah.
Not letting that go, obviously. Anyways, what are we doing? She explains that they're flying into a blizzard and they're making an emergency stop. That's why you couldn't get a drink.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the guy next, he's like, oh shit. Jerry puts on his seatbelt like, oh, this is intense. And the guy next to him introduces himself as Bill, shakes his hand, and he says like, I might be the last person you ever meet or ever see.
Might be the last person you ever see.
what a way to go. You die next to a stranger and you just crash.
Hans Moleman sitting beside you.
Yeah. And then he goes into a stand-up bit about the fear of flying. About humans, the fear of flying because humans don't fly. I think if fish would have a fear of driving because, they don't drive. Da-da-da-da-da. It wasn't the strongest bit.
No. I found the whole episode after this point isn't really strong. It was like, the episode started strong, but then it kind of, as we continue.
Yeah, it's got some good points. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would say about the fear of flying. I don't think I have a fear of flying, but I definitely have like a
fear of crashing,
like bumping. Yeah, when it goes like, whoo, I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, that's it.
Help. But I do have always that stoner moment where I'm like, whoa, this plane is so fucking heavy. How is it even in the air right now?
I know.
I'm like, whoa, dude. But no, seriously, the thing is huge. I'm like, it doesn't seem like it's going that fast. So how does it pick up? I'm like, anyway, yeah, the dumb Brian moment. They're like, how the fuck how is this flying right now?
I understand the idea of how it flies. I never got too tough to actually figure out. I'm not an aerospace engineer. It's just
exactly. And then you go, if you ever because you're next to the wing goes like, it bends. And I'm like, stay on there, little wing. And then statistically, more you're more likely to die in a fucking car accident than a plane accident or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, kind of think about that. I'm like, well, but people don't fly as much as they drive. Anyways, I'm not going to look into that.
That's the thing. What's the percentage of, not the number of?
Yeah. Let's see. The next scene is in George's car. Jerry, didn't die.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So his show was canceled. George picked him up from the airport. Jerry, thanks him, but also finds it, a little weird that George offered, to pick him up. Or suggested that he would. I'm like there's an ulterior motive.
Yeah.
So he's
George
like, oh,
I was worried about you after you told me what happened. I just want to be a solid friend.
Yeah, you're a good friend, because he does the whole because I realize after everything you've been through, it's like how important a good friend is.
Yeah.
Gives him a little that
nudge in the chin.
Yeah, you're my boy. And then just like how ridiculous. You can't play, and also George can't play anything off. He's got no poker face. And then George is insistent. I'm like, oh, let's go to your place. I'm like, oh, I can't go to my place because Elaine's having the shower there. And George's like, what? Today? You're having the shower? No way. Tonight at your place, huh? George, as I said, he's insistent on going. He's like, well, at least just stop by and we drop off your bag. Kind of thing. And then Jerry noticed the red collar poking out of the sweater. He's like, what? That's the shirt. He's wearing the chocolate stained red shirt. Yeah. And then so he's like, what, are you going to badger a pregnant woman at her own baby shower? Yes, that's George's plan.
Yeah, I am.
He's like, I'm going to hold the shirt under her nose so the smell of stale Bosco. He's like, remember this shirt, baby? Well, now it's payback time. It's like, I like the great character that George builds up of himself in his head. It's like everyone, knows that he's not gonna say that. The audience knows, but in his mind, he's a big shot.
Yeah,
he's gonna let it happen. But it goes to Jerry's apartment. And it kind of introduces the character Leslie, and builds her up as a real
not nice person,
bitch. It really
right, proper cunt, huh?
Or yeah, for lack of a better phrase, but she's a bitch for sure.
Yeah.
Just bragging about shit, and then just making fun of Elaine for the food that she got for the shower that she set up for her.
Yeah, can you throw a shower for me? I'll mock you the entire time. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is not somebody you'd want to be friends with anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. So it really sets her up. And she's like, okay, quickly. I'm like, they do a pretty good job of these characters. I'm like, I don't like this fucking person.
Yeah, they do a good job.
Because really, you're supposed to, even though they're pretty, the four of them are not great characters, people you really want to be friends with, the people that are around them, you definitely don't want to be friends with.
Yeah, they're even worse.
Yeah. So Kramer busts in with the Russian cable guys. They're gonna install the cable. Elaine wants him out, and then Kramer said it was all authorized by Jerry. Like that. It's like, this is all
who's
authorized.
This guy? And Kramer goes, which one?
Which one? Oh, these are Soviet cable guys. And then I like how he says, this is all authorized by Jerry. Like Jerry's like, okay, this is cool. But he can't do it any other time because the guy's so booked up. And then Elaine, reluctantly lets him do it, but it's like make it snappy,
Yeah.
It'll only take a few moments. This is what Kramer says. It'll only take a few minutes, and then you and the gals can take a load off and watch some Lifetime.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's even still around anymore, but it used to be like, I don't know, like a women's channel.
Yeah.
On cable. And so you're just like, okay, women like this.
Yeah, watch the thing.
Yep, watch the women's show. And that's how Kramer is. By the way, he announces it. And then all you women can watch some Lifetime. Everybody wins here. It got me pretty good. Yeah. So back in the car, George is going over the speech that he's going to say.
Yeah.
He's really just going to fucking let her have it. Just tee off on her. And then he goes, do you have the script up? He kind of was like, he had some good lines in there.
Yeah.
But it was just like, you're the disease or whatever the hell he says.
What did you quote me for? Just to dump chalk on my shirt and then just dump me altogether? I don't deserve that kind of treatment. What, you don't have the common courtesy to return my calls to apologize? You think I'm some sort of loser who likes to be abused, ignored, who sure can be ruined without financial restitution? Some sort of masochist who enjoys being humiliated? You just think you can avoid me like I have some sort of disease? You have the disease. You have the disease. You may be beautiful and rich and physically just unbelievable, but you sicken me. You disgust me. You and everyone like me.
It's all him just going off. And then Jerry's like, you don't have the guts. You're not going to do it. So back at the apartment, Kramer, he's just kind of bothering the shower guests. Like talks about, he has this apple bit. It's like, I eat the whole apple. The core, seeds, everything.
I did that when I was a kid because I think I was just trying to make it my thing one time for a while.
Yeah.
Like in the cafeteria, like, I'm going to be the guy that eats the whole core. It didn't last.
Like, this sucks.
Yeah.
The stem, everything. And then so he's off-putting, but not as bad as the cable guy who is disgustingly eating all the food. Yeah. And not working too, by the way.
Yeah.
So this
Kramer sticks up for him. He's like, it's the culture.
Yeah. He says, like, in Russia, the cable guy has the whole run of the house. It's tradition. It sounds like bullshit he made up just because he doesn't want to go tell the guy to, like, hey, get back to work, or hey, stop being what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the two Russian guys, they argue loudly, have a dispute, and then basically, Kramer pulls them apart there, and then one of the guys basically busts down the bathroom door to go use it and kicks out one of the guests. He's just banging and yelling, and it says yells in Russian or whatever. Was what it said on Netflix. He's just bah, 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 yelling. And then the woman comes out. She doesn't say anything, but she does a good job of being like a background extra. Or just kind of like, the fuck? She might be acting a little too hard, like, what the fuck? Oh my God.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable. She doesn't say a damn thing. It's just her face. It's pretty good.
Her face did say it all.
Yeah. And then Jerry comes in, and Elaine's like, she's trying to keep it together.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, why are you here? Oh, my show got canceled, blah, blah, blah. And then she sees George and preemptively, like, no, stop. I know what you're fucking doing.
Don't even think
about it. You're like, what? What do you mean? And then Elaine leaves for a second. He's like, all right, I'm taking this sweater off. He's got the chocolate stained red shirt. He's ready to go.
He still straightens out his shirt and everything. You see, he looks like a slob. He still does the whole pull the shirt tight thing. So.
Yeah. It's like, all right, cool. We're ready. I'm still gonna look my best here.
Yeah.
So he goes and he confronts Leslie, and she doesn't recognize him, know him from
no idea
anyone.
Who he is.
Yeah. And then he's sheepish about it. He's not like proud George. He's already fucking it up.
Yeah.
And she's like standing over him. And it's almost like he's not physically, but it's like you could tell like he's cowering.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I thought it was pretty good. You know, that kind of thing. It's like I always wanted to be an actor. My parents, like performer. And he's just, yeah. And then immediately after that, it cuts to Jerry, and he gets confronted by a woman named Mary Contardi. It was like she like oh yeah, I went on a date with you and went to one of your shows, and you never called her back, and then she goes off on him. So it's basically the opposite, like George's scenario, but just for Jerry and this woman.
Yeah. She screams at him.
So like so like, oh, I must have maybe forgot your number. Liar! She screams, makes a scene. And the lady, like I said, does what George is trying to do, but he fucks up at it. And then she just the long like speech about not treating people a certain way. Jerry, where does he get off? Da, da, da. And then she storms off. And then she goes to grab her coat, and then she kind of like nudges Leslie out of her way as she leaves the apartment, and causing Leslie, who was holding cake, talking to George, to like spill the cake and just right under George's already stained shirt.
And then she gets mad at George about it.
Yeah, and she acts like it's George's fault, even though
thanks
like
a lot.
Thanks a lot, even though Mary was the one who shoved her and causing her to smush the cake. And then everybody starts leaving after that whole display. And then during that, the Russian dude had the cake platter kind of just sitting on his gut, and he was eating the whole cake. It's a good like little display of what the chaos was. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it was kind of like, all right, this party sucks.
Yeah.
And then Jerry decides to call it off. He's like, no to the cable. Doesn't want the cable. He'll pay the guys for their time, but he's like, oh, you no want. They talk amongst themselves, and then they both like, okay, yeah, $400 is what you. I don't think we mentioned it, but yeah, Kramer says it was $150.
Yeah.
Is what he quoted Jerry.
Yeah.
And so that's more than double of what Kramer said earlier, and he doesn't have fucking cable. So pay these guys $400.
Yeah.
And then now it goes to Leslie. She's leaving, and as she's leaving, she kind of just shits on Elaine. Like, oh yeah, from what I've seen today, you're about the same as you were in college.
Yeah, we weren't sure if that was a good or a bad thing, though.
Yeah. And she doesn't once say thank you or sorry for the cake thing. No, she blames George. The whole thank you for setting this up, not once. And as she leaves, not a thank you.
Yeah.
And then she's a bitch.
Yeah.
Still her character. And then she goes and bullies George into taking all her baby shower gifts to her car.
Yeah.
And George is like sitting there, cake stained shirt, trying to move a stroller and car. Gift boxes down the stairs, and he's like, all right, I'll be back.
Yeah.
So Jerry's saying he's not gonna put up with the shit, and he's not paying that $400. I was like, what are you gonna do? Calls the guy. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna pay it. What are you gonna do? And then so the scene ends, and it opens up again in Jerry's apartment. They smashed his TV. It's cracked in the middle there. The glass is cracked, and then Elaine, George and Jerry. They're all, sitting in his living room watching the broken television. And they kind of all talk about what's going on in their minds and in their lives just to the room. And nobody's listening to each other. Yeah. George talks about how, women just walk all over him, but he wants every woman. Yeah. He's like, what's the matter with me kind of thing. And then Elaine's jealous of how she's not dating a Kennedy, like her friend Leslie.
Yeah. Before they're boring now. She's like, why can't I meet a Kennedy?
Why can't I? Yeah.
I saw John Jr. once downtown. I was on a bus. I hit the thing.
It didn't stop. And then, Jerry, he talks about how, no one really means they'll call him back after a date. When they say, like, oh, I had fun, I'll call you. It's like, nobody really means that.
Yeah, she couldn't actually think I meant it.
Yeah, so that woman, like, still is sticking, in his mind there. When he yelled at him. And then, Kramer comes in, kind of almost bragging about the cable. What's on cable? Da-da-da, come over. We're going to fucking... Is it Dr. Zhivago or whatever?
Yeah. I was going to look that up, but I didn't.
And then he's like, come on, I got making popcorn. And then it ends. Kind of like, that Russian cable guy. No, I mean, you weren't the main cause of like the party being shitty, but that didn't help.
No.
and also, they kind of, because of that, you broke Jerry's TV. So it kind of ends. Goes into a stand-up bit at the end where it's like, what you should actually say at the end of a date when you really don't want to see that person ever again. Like, what do you say? You can't say, well, I'll see you around. No, because you don't really want that person to be around. See you around here because you will be around, or I'll see you around there where we're not together. He's kind of going off of that.
Yeah.
They take care now. What does that mean? Take care at this moment, but not later. I don't want to take care.
Take care now.
Yeah. So what you really want to say is take off now. Go, bye. Get out of here. That's good. Yeah. And yeah. So with the whole like, oh yeah, I'll call you thing. I've done that before. On a kind of a date, I didn't really wasn't too into it, and I'm like, oh no, it was great, I'll call you later. And then a friend was like, so you said that you would call this person and you never did? Like, why? I didn't really like her on the date. It's like, fucking tell her. I'm like, well, I mean, and then it was kind of like friends at work who were like, well, it's been fucking 5 days, you can't call her and tell her like, hey, I actually really didn't want to call you again, so I'm calling you to tell you. It's like I'm like,
I don't want to call you.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay. And then friends are like, well, you can't really fix this, so don't call her again, don't text her, and just leave it at that. Like, you should have not said that you're gonna fucking call this person. So I'm like, okay, lesson learned. Don't say that. I'm like,
now I know.
All right, bye. That's how you should do it. At the end of a date, it's like, all right, bye. That's how it. That wasn't on Jerry's bit, but I'm like, that's really how you should, end it.
How would you say it that night though? Like, you finish, you're like, well, I didn't have a good time. I don't find you attractive as a person. Goodbye. Like, you can't say that to someone's face. It's
like, yeah, no, things were, it was pretty good. All right, bye. Because you want to say like, all right, talk to you later. I'm like, no, I don't want to talk to you later.
Yeah.
But yeah,
bye
it's like,
forever.
Yeah. Like, I could never see you ever again in my life, and it would be fine.
Yeah.
I said that to like a friend who was like, oh, it's kind of like friends with them in high school, and then you kind of meet up after like years or whatever, and you still kind of keep in touch on like Instagram. I'm like, I follow you, but I'm like, I could never see like, and I was like, oh yeah, Brian, we haven't seen each other in like 8-9 years or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, I could never see you again, and I wouldn't know anything.
If I
my
did
life,
not
why,
have Facebook,
yeah.
I would forget that you exist.
Well, it's something like that. I'm like, it's just like, oh, okay. I'm like, we don't have to hang out.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, it was like, yeah. Oh, like, and then they were like, Jesus Christ, you don't have to be that honest. And I'm like, okay, I guess I was trying to be funny, but it's like, it's true though. I'm like, yeah, if you never saw me again, or if I died, how long would it take for you to know?
Yeah.
And they're like, okay. Yeah, Brian. Oh, you're so honest.
As of tomorrow night, I've been off work for 10 weeks. Maybe 5 people probably noticed. Right? Like, it's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I work at a place, where I'm like, I'm there 5 days a week, and I, see a lot of the same, cast of characters. So if I wasn't there, which I like when I go on vacation. I was like, wow, we really did miss you.
Yeah.
Like, well, the place isn't burnt down. I'm like, because they'll be like, oh yeah, no, things were great, and then other people are like, no, a lot of shit didn't get done while you were gone. The people were who were covering for you, yeah, they did a shit job of covering for you. But yeah, I'm gonna be starting still working at the same place, but starting a new position, and so people are like, dang, what are we gonna do when you're gone? I'm like, I'll still be here, but yeah, so and so and the other people in my department, well, they're gonna have to do what I do. And they're like, no, but Jesus, what are we gonna do without you? I'm like, well, they should be able to cover that. I'm like, no, but they won't.
They won't. Yeah.
So all right, that'd be all right. But I kind of like that. And I'm like, oh, it feels like I'm at least appreciated by different,
peers.
By my peers.
Yeah. I think it's more important than being appreciated by management. It's being appreciated by
No, you're wrong. Because management, that's how you get promoted, and that's how you get more money.
I mean, in the heart.
Yeah. Because when your managers say like, "Oh yeah, this person does nothing," I'm like, "Yeah," then it's a real pain in the ass to get a promotion. When everybody
that's the
else,
people that do get promoted, though, right?
Exactly. But anyway, so what were we even talking about? Yeah, it was a good episode. I don't think it was kind of like you said. I guess it kind of like it built up the hill and it just kind of roller coastered on the way down. Like you knew where it was going to go.
As soon as it was over, I looked over at Ashley and said, "That wasn't a great episode." And she said, "No." I felt like it just kind of it started building up, and then it just got lost. I found the whole baby shower scene. It felt kind of forced and awkward, I guess.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, we went and watched the little bit on the DVD, the little extra.
Mm-hmm.
And Larry Charles said that was one of the earliest attempts at trying to marry multiple storylines together, where we've been watching it. It's been kind of one theme, and maybe Kramer just jumps in and jumps out, but he wasn't in the whole episode. So they tried to give everyone their own story and then marry them all together into one scene, which was the baby shower. So this was one of the first attempts at trying that. And they do get a lot better at it down the road, because this is what the series kind of becomes. Everyone has their own story that kind of all intertwine. And this is one of the first attempts at it. So it makes sense why I kind of felt at that point. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely wasn't the best. And we don't rate the episode.
Funny. It's still Seinfeld.
It's still good, yeah. But it wasn't the top dogs.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I guess let's get on out of here. Let's bring this in for a landing.
Yep.
Thank you for tuning into the Second Button podcast. You can follow us on social media. We have no, we don't have a Facebook group. We have that's fine. I think we're fine without it. Who knows? We are on Instagram, and then we're also on Twitter, linked in the description, and then YouTube channel, so you can watch the podcast. And I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Give us I haven't looked, but I wonder if we have any reviews. You can review the podcast on Apple and Spotify. So hopefully 5 stars. Leave us those. Definitely does help. So giving us
if you leave a review, we'll make Brian read it.
Yeah, we will. All right. We will see you next time.
All right. Take off now.
Yeah.